We open today with the report from Germany, where a gunman reportedly opened fire near the Israeli consulate in Munich. An official statement from the Israeli government clarified that there were no injuries in the attack as no one was present in the consulate, but added that the gunman was neutralized. Videos circulating on social media appear to show a heavy exchange of fire near the consulate, which is located close to a museum on the city's Nazi-era history. The apparent attack comes on the anniversary of the 1972 Munich Olympics terror attack, at the same time as the memorial service held by Israel was being conducted. Northern Israel is being pounded by Hezbollah rockets. Since our last broadcast, the Lebanese terror group fired over 100 rockets into the Galilee, causing heavy damage but no injuries. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
Homes in Israel's largely deserted northernmost city of Kiryat Shmona are taking direct hits. Homes are being decimated, but with few residents in the city, there were no injuries reported. Firefighters were called in to extinguish multiple blazes caused by the rockets. Some of the rockets were shot down by air defense or landed in open areas. A few made direct impact in civilian areas, particularly around Kibbutz Kfar Blum in the Galilee Panhandle. Israeli fighter jets retaliated by striking Hezbollah rocket launchers used in previous attacks on Israel. Later, the IDF said it struck a building in South Lebanon's Hula, where several Hezbollah operatives were identified. It's day 335 of the war in Gaza. The army showed the tunnel shaft in Rafah where the bodies of the 6 Israeli hostages were found. The tunnel was located next to stuffed toys and walls of cartoon characters in a children's play area. Chief of Staff Halevi held an assessment in central Gaza and said none of the goals of the war must be given up. The IDF continues to overwhelm the military wing of Hamas and does everything to bring the hostages home alive. Every captive we bring home alive, said Halevi, will have many years to come, and every terrorist will eventually be eliminated.
Prime Minister Netanyahu is pressing the case that the Philadelphia route must remain under IDF control indefinitely. At the same time, there are indications that Israel would be flexible and leave Philadelphia if the hostage for ceasefire deal ever reaches a second phase. More from ILTV's Devo Klein.
Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer joined Netanyahu in the English language effort at public diplomacy. The minister spoke to the press to argue the position that any hostage for ceasefire deal must include continued Israeli presence on the 14-kilometer access road along the Egypt-Gaza border.
We're committed to achieving our goals. All 3 goals: destroying Hamas's military and governing capabilities, releasing all our hostages, and ensuring that Gaza does not become a threat to Israel anymore. And all these require standing firm on the things that will ensure the achievement of these goals. You want to destroy Hamas's military and governing capabilities, you can't let Hamas rearm. It's obvious. So you have to control the corridor.
Dermer did not deny that Israeli officials assured Qatari mediators that the IDF would pull out of the Philadelphia corridor and all of Gaza if and when the hostage for ceasefire deal would see a group of hostages released in a 6-week first phase.
Phase 1, in order to get to phase 2 and a permanent ceasefire, that's when you can discuss long-term security arrangements on the Philadelphia corridors. I can assure you, Jonathan, in the wake of the horrific execution of 6 hostages, including an American, Hersh Goldberg, Poland, Israel is not going to make concessions in the wake of that. We are committed to a deal. We set people to sit with negotiators to try to get that deal done, and I hope we can do it. We're working with the U.S. administration to try to push that deal forward. I cannot talk about the arrangements in a second phase because we haven't even negotiated about it. Who is going to be there? How long is it going to take? Until, I'll make it very simple for you, Jonathan, until we have an actual practical solution on the ground for the Philadelphia corridor, Israel forces cannot leave.
As developments in the hostage for ceasefire negotiations continue, conflicting reports on what Israel is or isn't willing to concede are appearing around the world, with very little attention being paid to the fact that Hamas, of course, is still holding hostages and committing grave war crimes. Now, here to speak with us about the Philadelphia corridor debate is Ari Harrow, the former chief of staff for Prime Minister Netanyahu. Thank you for joining us, Ari. Now, I'll cut right to the chase. Netanyahu is saying saying that it's absolutely necessary to maintain control of the Philadelphia corridor. Then we see Gantz and Gallant both stating perhaps otherwise at certain points. Who is right?
So I think there's one point that everybody across the political spectrum can agree upon, and that is that there is importance to an Israeli military presence at the crossing, at the Rafah crossing. Everybody across the political spectrum does agree that the weaponry that flowed into Gaza over the last couple decades was a result of no Israeli presence there. And the debate that you do see in Israel today is not whether it is vital to Israel's security, but just can we take a momentary pause from our presence there in order to try and get the hostages home. So I think the vitality of an Israeli presence on the Philadelphia corridor and the Rafah crossing is really not an issue of debate. It's rather an issue of how we deal with it.
Well, that leads perfectly to my second question, which is a partial withdrawal, is that actually a possibility to get through perhaps phase one of this hostage deal and get our hostages home? Strategically, is that something that can weaken or threaten Israel, or is that something you think that the Prime Minister might be willing to do?
I think a presence that allows Israel to continue to monitor the crossings, to make sure that weapons don't flow in and that hostages don't flow out, is a solution, is a potential compromise that Israel could potentially agree to. But I think that the possibility that Hamas is pushing for, and keep in mind, not only is Hamas our adversary here, our enemy, they are an internationally recognized terror organization that opened up a vicious attack on Israel on October 7th, continues their murderous ways up until the execution, the brutal execution of the hostages just a few days ago. So capitulating to their demands clearly is not something in the interest of Israel. It's not in the interest of the Western world and not in the interest of those who want to see long-term peace. Having said that, I think that as long as Israel can retain some type of oversight and some type of ongoing presence, then certain, changes can be acceptable.
Now, there's been a lot of focus on Netanyahu himself with massive protests, outrage following the executions of the 6 hostages. It's true that he wasn't the one who did this, but does he bear responsibility for any of it? Is there more that he should have or could have done, or is all this obsession surrounding Netanyahu a bit too far?
I think that the anger and pain that people in Israel feel is really wall to wall, no matter what political party they come from. That anger and pain really needs to be focused against those perpetrators, those terrorists, those murderers that executed our innocent civilians. Any images that are projected towards Hamas that show a divided Israel are not in our interest. And I think that ultimately, if we want to find fault with anybody, it has to be with the terrorists on the other side of the border. Protests against Netanyahu are not something new in this country. We've seen them for years, and it's something that we're going to continue to see. But in the terrible situation that we're in, and in the real deep desire that we all have to bring back those hostages, let's focus our energies on doing exactly that, bringing them home.
All right, well, we are out of time, but I want to thank you for your insight, and thanks for joining us today on ILTV. Ari Harrow.
Thank you.
In Washington, an emotional memorial service for the 6 murdered Israeli hostages was held at Adas Israel Synagogue, attended by Second Gentleman Doug Mhof. Mhof spoke with great emotion about his call with John and Rachel Goldberg Poland after the murder of their son Hirsch, who was a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen.
You've all seen the pieces of tape that Rachel and John have been wearing over their hearts throughout this dark year. At Hirsch's funeral yesterday, they still wore the tape marking the number of days the hostages had been in captivity. That was 332. I saw that and thought that count was never about their son alone. As you can see, as the world has seen, John and Rachel's hearts have room to hold everyone. They are not giving up, and neither can we. Not on this 333rd day. Not ever. Not until every hostage is reunited with their family.
Following the barbaric execution of Israeli hostages by Hamas, the UN Security Council is facing calls to condemn Hamas, something that they have thus far failed to do in the previous 4 resolutions. Let's take a look. Yesterday in the UN Security Council, Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, called on the Security Council to condemn Hamas's execution of Israeli hostages, including American citizen Hirsch Goldberg, Poland.
Since October 7th, the Security Council has passed 4 resolutions with no condemnation of Hamas for their crimes. Meanwhile, the General Assembly has passed 2 resolutions. Hamas is never even mentioned in either resolution. The Council has a moral obligation to adopt a very simple resolution that condemns Hamas, their atrocities, designates them as a terrorist organization, and demand the release of the hostages.
The United States also echoed a similar sentiment with U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, openly condemning Hamas and questioning Hamas's sincerity in hostage for ceasefire negotiations.
The 6 hostages killed this weekend were executed at the same time negotiators were discussing the names of individuals to be released in a ceasefire deal. It calls into question the sincerity of Hamas negotiators. The United States strongly condemns Hamas's brutality. It is long past time this council do the same.
The UN Security Council session also discussed the Gaza war and the Palestinian question beyond the issue of hostages. This was the first such session focused on Israeli hostages since October 7th. The IDF anti-terror operations dubbed Summer Camp are continuing in Samaria. IDF drones struck in the Palestinian town of Tubas, hitting a terrorist cell planning attacks on Israel. One of the drone strikes targeted and killed 5 terrorists, including the son of notorious Hamas commander Zakaria Zubeida. 21-year-old Mohammed Zubeidi was among the dead. His father escaped from Gilboa prison in 2021, along with 6 other high-security prisoners, leading to a 2-week manhunt before they were captured. The IDF said the drone targeted the gunmen as they were firing at Israeli troops in the Tubas area. The IDF anti-terror operation is ongoing in Tulkarem. The Kfir Brigade killed 2 gunmen in an exchange of fire. The troops also confiscated weapons and ammunition and a bomb that was hidden in a child's stroller. Britain's decision to suspend arms exports to Israel has received criticism from both pro-Israel and anti-Israel groups. ILTV's Ariella Lahiani is at the British Embassy in Tel Aviv now with more details.
In a very controversial move, Britain has decided to suspend 30 of its 350 arms export licenses to Israel. Now, this decision comes following a government review citing concerns that the equipment may be being used in Gaza in ways that breach international humanitarian law. Now, this news has of course sparked heated reactions both amongst pro-Israel groups, but also those who demand that more stringent restrictions should be put into place. More in the following report. British Foreign Minister David Lammy announced the suspension on Monday, stating that there was a risk some arms exports could be used in violation of humanitarian law during Israel's ongoing conflict with Hamas. Lammy emphasized that this was not a full arms embargo, but a targeted decision covering equipment like military aircraft, helicopters, and drones. Jewish groups and British politicians quickly condemned the move, accusing the government of abandoning Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu labelled the decision shameful, warning it would embolden Hamas. On the other hand, some human rights groups and political figures argue the suspension doesn't go far enough, criticising exemptions, especially for parts using F-35 fighter jets. Britain's decision reflects growing tensions at home between pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian groups. Since Israel's war with Hamas began, thousands have protested, calling for a complete halt to arms sales. Polls show over half of the British public supports ending the sales, yet the suspension risks straining diplomatic ties with Israel, a key ally. British Foreign Minister David Lammy assured that this is not a judgment on Israel's right to self-defence, which we firmly support. However, we must ensure that our arms exports align with international law.
It's day 335 of the war in Gaza, and rocket fire has been consistently targeting Israel's northern communities, some of which have already been evacuated for safety. The Home Front Command is always looking for new ways to create a safer environment for Israelis via their guidelines. So let's go to ILTV correspondent Devo Klein to give us more info on the latest upgrade from the Home Front Command. Devo, what can you tell us?
Yes, Emily, as you have already stated, Hezbollah has been firing nonstop at Israel's northern communities since October 7th, so almost a full year of sirens and alerts coming from the Home Front Command. Many Israelis recognize the on-screen alerts that are used often during live television broadcasts, but the familiar bright orange alert graphic is now being changed to an upgraded design. All this, of course, to facilitate an event of multiple sirens across multiple communities. The new graphic can now support the rapid alerts and is even getting a color upgrade to support those with visual impairment. So this, of course, follows their recent announcement last month of an upgraded cellular alert system also aimed at making nationwide alerts clearer and faster. We'll be sure to follow all the Home Front Command guidelines, as they do, in most cases, save lives.
Thank you, Devo. And now it's time for our Hebrew Word of the Week. Each week, along with eTeacher, we learn a new Hebrew word and relate it to the Bible, current affairs, and our everyday lives. For more info on the Rosen School of Hebrew, please scan the QR code on your screen. But in the meantime, let's hear this week's Word of the Week.
Welcome to Hebrew Word of the Week. I'm Mariella, and in this segment, together with eTeacher, we explore the beauty and depth of the Hebrew language. We'll learn a new Hebrew word or phrase and see how it's used in the Bible, current events, and everyday life. Today's Hebrew word is bitachon, which means security. In Hebrew, security is essential in ensuring safety and stability, whether on a personal, community, or national level. Bitachon is a word that carries significant importance in Hebrew. It represents the concept of feeling safe, protected, and confident, whether in a physical, emotional, or spiritual context. Here are some examples of how the word bitachon is used in a sentence. Habitachon chashuv lekol adam. Security is important for everyone. Ani margisha bitachon kan. I feel secure here. So if you're interested in learning more about the Hebrew language, check out eTeacher. This online and live course is the most established Hebrew language instruction institution. You can learn with a time-proven method for every level or start from scratch. eTeacher offers dynamic online courses with live video lessons, weekly webinars, and ample support, and allows you to connect to a lively global community for an enriched learning experience. Scan the QR code or click the link below and visit the eTeacher website today to learn more. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Hebrew word bitachon. Please join us next week for another episode of Hebrew Word of the Week. In the meantime, I encourage you to explore the concept of bitachon in Hebrew culture and reflect on its significance in your own life. Feel free to share your thoughts and experiences with us in the comments below.
Well, this week I had the pleasure of joining Iranian artist Houmen Khalili at a special event in Israel unveiling the 15th mural of support for the Iranian people. This mural honored 2 fallen IDF soldiers of Persian descent who sacrificed their lives for the country on October 7th. Let's take a look. Today in Israel, Iranian artist Houmen Khalili is unveiling the 16th mural of support for the Iranian people within the state of Israel. This amazing project began at the height of the women life freedom protests in Iran following the murder of Iranian Kurdish woman Mahsa Amini by the regime's morality police in Iran. Amini was killed for improperly wearing hijab. So far, murals have been painted in Tel Aviv, Netanya, Haifa, Jerusalem, Nazareth, and many other Israeli cities. Khalili's murals in Israel since October 7th have emphasized the shared goals and historical friendship of the Iranian people and the Israeli people, who both suffer ongoing persecution by the Islamic Republic of Iran, in Israel via proxy terror groups like Hamas, and in Iran by the IRGC itself. The mural unveiled this week in Kfar Maccabiyah highlighted Israeli soldiers Sahar Saudian and Shirel Haimpour, both of whom are of Persian descent and both of whom were tragically killed on October 7th by Hamas. It also features several prominent artists and athletes in Iran who have faced persecution and imprisonment at hands of the regime. Khalili, who is a Christian, hopes that these murals will bring unity and hope to the 2 communities suffering from the terrorism of the regime in Iran. What does it mean to you to have Shirel remembered this way with such a mural and support between, your heritage, Iranian heritage, and of course here in Israel as a hero, really, the hero that she was?
שיראל הייתה גיבורה, אין ספק שהייתה גיבורה. כשאני רואה אותה זה קצת באיזשהו מקום מרומם לי את הרוח, נותן לי אוויר קצת. אבל הכאב נשאר לי בתוך הלב, של למה היא צריכה להיות פה על הקיר ולא איתנו.
Human, thank you for speaking with us today. I want to start by asking you, why is it so important for Iranians to see support from Israel and for Israelis to see support from Iranians with a project like this?
Everyone needs to remember that the Persians and the Jews have been friends for 3,000 years, and we've only been enemies for less than 50, and it's an opportunity through these murals to rebuild that bridge. The relationship between the Persians and the Jews at its heart is biblical. And when you do the unofficial surveys of Iran, because you can't do an official survey, 95% of the Persian people stand with the state of Israel. And so every time somebody who's been murdered or blinded or maimed is remembered in the Holy Land, inside the people of Iran, a fire is burning bright for freedom and justice. And we say, thank you, Israel. Thank you for being the only country in the Middle East to stand with the freedom-fighting women of Iran.
Absolutely. What have the reactions been to this mural project? I know it's been going first even before October 7th. What kind of reactions have you seen?
Before October 7th, it was a lot different. So at the very beginning, it seemed like everybody was behind it. They were shocked that they were here at the State of Israel. Unfortunately, right now, it's so fashionable to hate Israel and hate the Jews. I'd say 50% of the Persians in America are supporting this. 25% are against it, and 25% are indifferent. In Iran, well over 90% of the people love the murals in Israel. I get messages from all around the world. The best thing about these murals is I hear every other day, I used to hate Israel. I used to hate the Jewish people. Now that I see this mural, I love Israel. I love the Jews.
Finally, can you tell us a little bit about this particular mural? I know there's a lot of symbolism we can see here behind us, but can you tell us about it from your perspective as the artist?
So I originally designed this mural for Nashville, Tennessee, and I couldn't get a wall. And this is the only mural that has Mahsa Amini's real name because she's a Kurdish Iranian. And her real name is Gina Mahsa Amini, but it's illegal to have a Kurdish name in Iran. So I put this there because I was hoping to put it in Nashville, where the largest Kurdish community is in the United States. Next to her is a woman named Mercedes, and her eye was shot out by the Islamic regime. She's a fitness enthusiast. I believe she's living in Germany or Italy, away from the Islamic regime. In the middle, you've got the three Persian Jews, Sahar, Sharel, and Queen Esther. And then on the far right, you have Tumaj. Israel is the only place in the world where there's Tumaj murals. There are no Tumaj murals anywhere else in the world. Thank you for standing by him. Thank you for bringing awareness to who he is. You were the one that encouraged me originally to do the Tumaj mural, so we have one at the Elvis Diner, we have one in Matea Yehuda, and now we have one here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for this amazing project, Human, and for all the work that you're doing. I'm sure the people of Iran thank you, and as an Israeli, we thank you as well.
Sagot Winery, where passion meets tradition. Nestled in the heart of Binyamin, our vineyards yield exquisite wines crafted with generations of expertise.
Let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 22 degrees Celsius or 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, partly cloudy skies and warm weather is expected, as temperatures should reach highs of 32 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperatures should rise drastically over the weekend. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, ILTV.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.